Please, let me call City Council meeting to order. Thank you all for coming. We could have sold tickets tonight. This would have been good. Thank you all. I'd like to acknowledge that press and public have been notified. I'd like to ask everybody to please rise for an invocation and pledge of allegiance. Let us bow our heads. Oh, Heavenly Father, continue to bless our island community, the people, and its environment. We ask you this evening to care for those who are suffering through the disasters in the Caribbean, in Florida, Texas, and Mexico City. It has taken so much from everyone there. Help us, O Lord, to keep ever mindful that we too live in a fragile place on earth. Also in our prayers are the men and women who serve this nation in all the corners of the world. Watch over them and protect them. For it is in your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Marina, can you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Burgworth. Here. Councilmember Mattelli.
Here.
Councilmember Carroll.
Here.
Councilmember Loren.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Harrington.
Here.
Councilmember Kinghorn.
Present.
Councilmember Rice.
Here.
Councilmember Ward.
Here.
Mayor Cronin.
Present.
Administrator Tucker.
Here.
And Attorney Howard. Here.
Oh, thank you all. Glad we had a full house. Next item is reading a journal of previous meeting. You have the regular meeting of August 22nd minutes in your package. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any amendments, deletions, corrections? None heard. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that carries. Now we're up to the appointment and administration of oath to new employees. I'd like to entertain a motion to appoint Karina Garcia as a patrol officer and Chris Rouse as a firefighter.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Karina, can you meet me up front? I promise this will be painless. Use your right. Feet up. You ready for this? All right. And that sheet over there.
Yeah.
That would work. I, Karina Garcia, do solemnly swear that I am duly qualified, according to the ordinances of the City of Isle of Palms, to perform the duties of the position to which I have been selected, and that I will, to the best of my abilities, discharge the duties thereof. So help me God. Excellent. Welcome. She's finishing her field training now. I'm not sure how much longer you've got, but one more page. All right. And originally from Arizona? Yes. Oh. Love
Mr. Mayor, don't tell about the humidity, please.
Welcome to the team. Enjoy. Thank you. Christopher, here he comes again. He looks so relaxed. Welcome back. Thank you. You know the drill. Raise your right hand. I, Christopher Rouse. Do solemnly swear. That I am duly qualified. According to the ordinances. City of Isle of Palms. To perform the duties. Of the position. To which I have been selected. And that I will. To the best of my abilities. Discharge the duties thereof. So help me God. Welcome back. Somebody recognized Chris. He's been with us before. Yep. Moved away. Saw the wisdom to come back. Okay. Let's go on to citizens' comment, please. Before I open up for citizens' comment, just in case somebody leaves before we finish, I want to let everybody know that we are the proud recipients of the Charleston's Choice 2017 Winners Award from Post and Courier as the best family beach.
All right.
So this will be displayed appropriately in one of our, I say one of, probably our only display. But it's something we strive for every year, whether we're recognized by the Post and Courier or not. So, all right, let me move on to other citizens' comments. John Dodge was on my list.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, I will be as brief as I possibly can. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here on behalf of Barrier Isles, LLC, doing business as Morgan Creek Grill. We all know Jay Clark and Carla Pope. Been before you the last year and a half or so, diligently trying to secure an extension of their lease agreement, which originally began back in May of 2002 through October of 2005, with 5 additional 3-year options, renewable 90 days in advance of that expiration. In all our haste to secure an extension of the lease, Mr. Clark neglected to give written notice to the town of his intention to exercise the 5th 3-year option. He's obviously remorseful for that, and frankly was somewhat shocked to learn that the city had determined to consider allowing a late exercise of the option, provided, however, that the dock space that he currently has at the restaurant be taken away from him, about 10 spaces. They are a marina restaurant, and access to their restaurant by way of boat traffic is an integral part of their business. And we are certainly hopeful that this council will take into consideration that Morgan Creek Grill has been a faithful tenant for the past 15 years. We all remember we had the issues with respect to the music and the noise. They took the initiative. They built a sound stage to the tune of about $45,000 to eliminate those citizens' concerns. That's just one example of the sort of cooperation that Morgan Creek Grill has shared with the city. And by the same token, the city has been a good landlord as well. We don't have any issues, Mr. Mayor, Council, with relocating some of that dock space, but we do need dock space. And so I am hopeful, number one, that Council will agree to allow Morgan Creek to exercise that 5th 3-year option to extend its lease through October 31, 2020. We're hopeful of coming back at some point and again requesting the opportunity to extend that lease. We'd like another 18 years. We've kind of been back and forth. We thought we had it. We don't have it. But we're here today because absent your moving forward with allowing us to exercise that option, although tardy by some 24 days, we're talking about closing down our business on October 31st and terminating the services of some 80 employees. And we certainly hope it'll never get to that. Again, we don't mind relocating our dock space from where it currently is to accommodate some other needs for the city, and we understand those needs and we cooperate and encourage that. We're just asking that council consider giving us some comparable dock space within walking distance of our restaurant so that people who want to come have a meal coming from boat have the ability to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, John. Others, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm J.C. Buddy Nicholson, and I live at 20 Commons Court in Wild Dunes, which is behind the Links Golf Course. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. I want to thank you, whoever put out this brochure that you mailed. I thought it was very informative, put together very well, and it very emphasized no tax increase in italics. I thought that was very, very good. I want to thank you for sending it out to the residents. I'll just give you a little why I'm here, very briefly. First of all, I'd like to say my limited experience with the marina has been very good with whoever has the leasee. It's been very good. Everybody's been very cordial, and I plan on voting for the amendment. I don't know why you're having it, but I plan on voting for it. I think it's a valuable asset that you have here in Isle of Palms, and you need to take care of it. It needs regular maintenance. I just want to tell you my reason I'm here today is I have Wild Dunes, as you well know, you can't park boats outside. You have to put them in the garage. And I had a little 16-foot boat with 90 horsepower on it. My wife didn't like it because it wasn't big enough, so I sold it and I was going to buy another one. However, it won't fit in the garage. So I started looking around trying to find a place to put a boat in the trailer. And a friend of mine has space on a trailer rented down at the marina, so I went down to the marina and asked him about renting space. Well, they got 51 people on a waiting list. They've got 25 renters now at the marina, boats sitting on trailers. And they have 51 waiting lists. I don't know how many are residents of Isle of Palms on the waiting list, or how many of those 25. And then I got this in the mail, and see where you're cutting the 25 down to 11. And I would just ask you to please consider, I'm sure I'm not the only person that would like to have a place to put their boat and store their boat on a trailer, which is fine. 150 parking places. Are y'all going to have a jazz session every week, or what? Why do you need 150 parking places? I go to the marina quite a bit. I've never seen every parking place filled. So I got real curious this morning. I got in my golf cart and I rode down the marina and I started counting. I counted 91 spaces that are marked. That doesn't include the one in the water sports. Said water sports only. It's probably 25 or so in there. And it doesn't include the ones that you got to have a permit for. That's marked spaces for the public to park, 91. And I just like to finish up by saying the math is real simple. I understand they charge $200 a month. If you have 50 spaces, that's $10,000 a month, $120,000 a year for the marine operator. He needs to run his business, not to mention the fact I assume you got a commercial lease and you get a percentage of that. That's going to increase your percentage either monthly or annually, and that could go towards retiring this bond. And I would just ask you, please consider providing a place for the island residents to put their boat when it's too big to get in the garage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, buddy. Okay, others? Elizabeth, jumping up?
Elizabeth Campson, 32 Intracoastal Court. After listening to the audio of the September Real Property Committee meeting, I have some final thoughts on the marina I'd like to share. As you all know, I followed the marina redevelopment discussions from the beginning. This is not now, nor has it ever been, an election issue for me, and I feel very strongly that there's still a significant amount of work to be done. First, I ask you all to familiarize yourself with the terms of the current leases. I have printed copies and are being distributed. You will see that the leases for the marina tenant and the restaurant tenant each specifically define their respective leased premises. The condition and maintenance section of each lease details the responsibilities of each tenant. Each lease states that the tenant is responsible for any and all repairs, maintenance, and replacement, both ordinary and extraordinary, at the leased premises. Each leased premises contains sections of the parking lot. When cobbled together, the majority, if not all, of the expense related to the extraordinary replacement of the parking lot, an expense the city is prepared to assume in Phase 1 of the plan, is actually a tenant expense. The boat ramp is also a portion of the leased premises, and any and all extraordinary replacement of that item should be the responsibility of the tenant as well. Second, if the referendum passes and we spend $5.5 million to revitalize the site, it should be noted that the assessed value of the marina will increase tremendously. Will the city see additional rent from the tenants based on the increased value of a brand new asset? As currently structured, only the tenants will benefit. If a future plan serves to increase the value of the leased premises by a certain percentage, the revenue received from the tenants should increase by the same percentage. Otherwise, the city will not only have paid for the extraordinary replacement of the tenant's leased premises, but will also have greatly reduced and/or eliminated any future expenditures for maintenance and repair those tenants would not have made had the renovation not occurred. This will have been done in exchange for nothing. The leases should be amended to address this. With all of the discussion lately about generating more revenue, as well as comments regarding the strength of our tenant agreements, I sincerely hope the city seriously investigates a cost-sharing plan per the terms of the leases, and also revisions to the lease terms in order to realize a portion of a potentially increased valuation. Third, the Marina lease contains a list of tenants' operational and service requirements. These are established by the landlord, the city, and the tenant has agreed to operate the marina in accordance with them. For over 2 years, I have asked the city to amend this exhibit in order to make the site more manageable and more resident-friendly. Items to formally address include the permanent elimination of the practice of selling of unlimited number of annual launch passes to non-resident patrons, the permanent elimination of the practice of selling more non-resident launch passes than available on-site parking, the establishment of a residential threshold for all launching and parking to ensure residential access to the site, an increase in the daily non-resident launch fee to a rate that allows the tenant to make the same amount of money on non-resident launches with less traffic and parking issues, and the establishment of parameters for slip rentals that ensure residential access and use. To date, this exhibit has not been amended. I attended the March 2016 Planning Commission meeting, which was held to begin the development of a residential plan. During that meeting, it was stated that we have a 50-slip marina. Of those 50 slips, 8 were rented to island residents. I understand that that number may now be 12. Of the remaining slips, a portion are utilized for a rental fleet, a portion are rented to charter operators, a portion are utilized by the city for emergency vessels, and the remainder are rented to non-residents. The conditional promise of future slip rentals for island residents should not be conditional and should not be determined by the tenant. The landlord controls the service requirements, not the tenant. I cannot support any referendum that does not concretely address these issues by entering into formal executed lease amendments that clearly define the operational changes that will be made for the benefit of island residents. Fourth, I'm not convinced that this plan, based on the parking numbers, will offer residents any greater access than we have now. Inarguably, it would look better, but I am not persuaded it would function much better for the residents. I cannot support a plan that reduces available car spaces and continues to fall short of statewide accepted trailer parking calculations. The only way a new configuration could possibly work for the benefit of the residents is through the establishment of significant limitations on non-resident day tripper use, which does not appear to be the will of this council. For over 2 years ago, I hope to stand in front of you at the end of this redevelopment process, excited for the future of the site. Instead, I stand here frustrated by the fact that, among other things, the full expense of the project will be assumed by the city and its residents for a return that only concretely guarantees a benefit to the tenants. Unfortunately, I cannot support the plan in its current form.
Okay, thank you. Please, anyone else, please? Ralph.
My name is Ralph Martino. I have been a neighbor and a customer of the restaurant as well as the marina for almost 20 years. I want to thank the restaurant for the solution to the noise problem. I live right across. I now bring my grandchildren there on Saturdays and Sundays. We have a nice lunch. We have great entertainment on the stage, and I think you did a wonderful job. I want to thank the council for the time you spent on this marina enhancement program, countless hours and days, I'm sure, with a competent consultant. I just want to comment on the management of the marina by Brian Berrigan, the current tenant. I think he and his team have done a marvelous job. If you go down there, you see the same faces every day, every month, every year. There's stability, there's leadership. There have been the right kind of enhancements with the funding from the council in the past. I would just encourage us all to trust the work that was done by the consultant, trust the leadership of a tenant that's been there for quite some time. And I believe what he's brought forward with the help of the consultant and the council will provide greater service to the residents of the Isle of Palms and make the marina the crown jewel that it could be and should be as a wonderful asset to all of us who live here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. Others, please. Randy?
Always got to have a contra. So let me start. I've been coming here for the last several years as well and have followed the marina issues pretty. Oh, I'm sorry, Randy Bell, 22 41st Avenue. I think there's a lot of misconception when people say they're not in favor of the referendum, number one. It has nothing to do with being anti-marina. It has nothing to do with being against Brian. It has a lot to do with the current financial situation that was created by this council and others running for council that put us in a 30-year lease by which our terms are set and we are not going to receive additional revenue, right? So, sir, I appreciate your comment, but more revenue in doesn't mean more revenue to the city. The other thing that I'd be remiss to not comment on, I guess when you announce that you're running, you get a lot of emails, and I've had a lot of feedback that council is advocating for the marina and not simply presenting facts. I think what's been presented is factual. I do think it's, however, incomplete. I would start by saying, I got the mailer. My first reaction to the mailer, and I've run a lot of large marketing organizations, was it's very much marketing. I didn't know we were doing community revitalization. It's a marina enhancement plan for 5.2 acres of city property. It's not community revitalization. I went through it and I said, I've listened to the presentations from ATM, trying to find where's the resident benefit. I've been through the numbers. Linda knows ad nauseum. She's ready to kill me at this point. But how many slips are available for residents? How many are available for non-residents? I've met with Brian. Right? Brian's assured us he'll work with us on this issue. My issue is the financial terms that we have with the marina. Pure and simple. I'm a business guy. We have a 30-year lease that when you take Jay Clark's lease, Mark's, and combined with Brian, that brings to the city $406,000 a year. There are profit toggles, and I'm not going to do this again because I've done it too many times with council. Gross income is measurable. It's receipts. Gross profit is receipts less cost of goods sold. Good business operators, and I believe Brian is going to be very remiss to increase profits and hit toggles that start paying the city more money. I would make more investments. That's what good business people do. So we're locked into a lease till 2045 that is not going to bring more money to the city no matter how much money we spend on this marina. That bothers me, right? I want the marina to have investments made into the marina as well. I'm an advocate of the marina. I live down the street from it. But when we fail to mention, and God, I've had so many conversations lately with people just wanting to understand.
Randy, you should be facing
I'm
council,
sorry.
please.
I'm sorry. When I look at this and go, what are we not telling people? We own, regardless of this referendum, we own the maintenance of that marina, right? So we comment that we put $54,000 of general fund into the marina over the last 10 years. We don't stress the $5 million plus that came from tourism dollars. The $803,000 going in this year, which includes 2/3 of the underground storage tank and 1/3 of the bulkhead replacement, right? We're doing these things anyway. It's not referendum dependent, right? We own that responsibility. It's not going away. It's not referendum dependent. If you don't understand the terms of the lease and you don't pay attention to the finances, you're led to believe a lot of things that, frankly, I don't think are true. So my big concern, when and I've called that house of cards very blatantly, when you fund things based on tourism dollars, and we take another $5.5 million loan, and those tourism dollars go away, I don't think FEMA's standing behind us to fix our marina for us. I just don't believe that. I think it's incumbent on us, and the only answer at that point, by the way, is a millage increase and a tax increase. Because we're going to own the bond debt secured by our physical asset of the marina whether we have tourism dollars to offset this expense or not. Frankly, and I will make the comment with Brian sitting here, what I would have done is negotiate a gross income lease on the front side of the referendum and put financial terms on it that actually would make a referendum work for the residents, and put hard, secure, legally binding considerations into it that makes this a residential marina first and foremost. No offense to Brian, but when I read the comment, it said there's no reason to believe with the amount of people moving to the area that we can't continue successfully. The last thing I want to see is more people off island coming to this marina at the expense of the residents. That's not what this referendum was intended to do. So respectfully, I don't support it. I do support making investments in the marina. I've had conversations with Carol and Barbara and others. I love having the marina down the street. I'm not against the marina, but I think we need to take a deep breath and understand what we're really trying to accomplish and set about it in a way that works and serves the good of the people, not just the off-island residents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Others? Anyone else? Two hands up. Take your pick.
John McMaster, 2801 Palm Boulevard, and I'm getting off the subject of the marina because I have no horse in that race. But I do walk the beach just about every day, and there are two. One of them is a convoluted question. I have noticed as I walk down toward Breach Inlet that there are many decks, walkways, steps that are piled in a pile about 20, 30 feet high that we have spent to accumulate. Now, the reason for that is because people have built walkways onto the beach. Well, eventually onto the beach, because we do lose some of our dunes from time to time. And I don't suggest that they have to mark their boards, brand them, but should not they be responsible for the cleanup part? We're going to spend supposedly $250,000 to create some dunes, to protect some homeowners. We're doing that on the east end of the beach, west end of the beach, but I understand that the east end has not even been touched yet. And those people have seawater coming into their yards, some of which...
As soon as the crews finish here,
they're going to go up there. I understand that. But could they not have been up there already if they weren't having to clean up all these decks and walkways and steps? Couldn't that... leads me to the other point of my concern. As I walk down the beach, I notice walkways being constructed onto what I think now is a public beach. Do they have to have permits? And if they have to have permits, why are we not checking on that? And if they are allowed to build a deck or a walkway onto a public beach, should they not be responsible for the cleanup after our next storm?
Well, first of all, the permits are issued by OCRM. We don't even get consulted. And I agree with you. We're out cleaning up the beach after they've put it over their deck walkover after Matthew. Now we're out here cleaning up the same walkovers after Irma. But we don't even get consulted when somebody's asking for a beach walkover.
Well, I know when I built my oceanfront house, a gazebo, I had to get a permit from the city.
We don't issue.
You don't do that anymore? Okay.
We issue, OCRM issues the permit.
Yeah.
The regulations are OCRM's regulations, and your point is valid. It's definitely a problem that people get permission for these, and then they become beach debris and become a safety hazard, and it leaves the city with the responsibility of of cleaning it up. Now, I should say that some property owners do go out there and try to harvest what they can find of theirs, so it's not everybody that leaves it alone. The city is made aware of these permits, but you know, it's right now, according to OCRM, they're allowed to do them. I do think if there are those that would like to advocate for a change in state law, I do think that there's some merit in the idea that OCRM should require these owners to put up a bond so that in the event the things are destroyed, there's a source of money at state level for folks like myself or the city and other cities and maybe the state to clean the problems up.
Thank
so
you.
That would be advocacy with the state legislature.
And are we doing anything in that regard? That is my question.
I think
No.
any citizen.
My
can do
next
that.
concern is, I talked to
Well,
Donnie.
before it's finished, if for protection, if you put sandbags out there, by state law now, you must have a bond
Well,
in
I know.
place for the
Yeah.
removal of that in the event
Yeah.
when that happens. But the beach walkovers is something we just...
And I drag a lot of sandbags to the trash every
Right.
day. So, yeah, and I'm glad for that. But, you know, are we doing anything about people building into our beach, you know, about these walkways? My next concern is I talked to Donnie the other day about 28th Avenue walkway being still flooded. Yeah. And he said, that's not my job. Said, I have got too much to do with the sump pump I've got, you know, pumping out, you know, people's yards and streets, you know, that we don't have any drainage for. You know, we're spending $1 million on a new exercise room that might or might not be ever utilized. But yet, have we addressed the idea of some drainage on Isle of Palms?
Well, we have a project underway, $2.7 million for drainage, but it only covers 7 blocks, you know? It's very expensive, and it's taken us 5-6 years
Well, it's
to pull that money together.
taken the city of Charleston 40 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're not quite as big, and I don't think our problem is quite as big as theirs. You know, I have walked to the rec center, you know, for 25 years, and there is a, you know, drainage no, it's not a drainage ditch. There's a, you know, containment, you know, that is always septic. You know, has never been touched. Yeah. And if Donnie doesn't have any more sump pumps, you know, there are people that are going to have to buy a raft to get to their houses.
I can tell you we're working on it. Like I said, we spent 5-6 years putting together enough package money to do the project between right now 52nd and 40th.
Well, maybe we should take that $1 million we're going to spend on the exercise room and get on with this other project.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
Yes, please.
During citizens' comments, aren't we told that there's not a conversation?
Normally, that's correct. It's my bad. Please.
I was glad that he was before me because I got more emphasis to put on drainage than probably he does, but he made some very good points. I'm Wayne Jones. I live on 52nd Avenue. I've lived on Isle of Palms for about 15 years, various houses, because I've exchanged them, sold them, and bought and redone and everything else. First of all, I want to thank the council for volunteering to be up here. I think it's a thankless job, and I think y'all try to do a decent job. Mayor Crown, I have sent notes to and appreciate his time and the way he manages this council. Because sometimes us sitting back there look at it, and it's a disaster up here with all the comments and no's that are being passed on. No agreement, no deals, no suggestions, no. And we, as public and residents on this island, are getting sort of tired of that. And I think it's representative of the number of people that are running against council this year, and it'll probably be more next year if it doesn't change. But I do want to say that I appreciate your efforts, and we need to concentrate on a few other things. I'm going tonight throw out 3 different nuggets for you to think about, and sometimes these things fall on deaf ears, but I'm hoping that somebody will pick up the battle and fight some of these things for the residents. Many times in the agreements that are out here, you either do it for the day troopers, you do it for wild dunes, but you never do it for the people that live on this island. The only thing you've done for this island lately is put up signs, and we'd like to see more than that done for the residents here. The first nugget I'd like to throw out, contrary to what was said earlier, is a recreational center. I think it's very much needed here. I sent notes to the council about this. I got no answer from some of them, which surprises me, but it really doesn't when I see them up here on council. I heard one that say there's plenty of room there, we don't need a recreational room. I heard some say it was a waste of money. I have others said I'd rather have a pool than a rec, than a cardiac room. And others said I'm conservative and I don't want to spend the money. Another one said put it in the Islanders. Now this is a response I get from the council. Nothing in support or nothing positive that supports what we need to do for the people on this island. We find money to put sand and build it back up at the end of the islands, which is needed and protected the residents and all at that end, east or west. And we keep trying. We did this about 3 years ago. We're throwing money away, but we always find 2.4, 2.9 millions of dollars to spend for sand that's absolutely going to be washed back into the ocean, and we do it again 3 years from now. What are we gaining from this? I once had a house in North Carolina, and surprisingly, they fought it for 10 years, pumping sand, trying to protect the houses. And finally, money ran out, and they got wise. Let nature take its course. And it did. It washed the end of the island away, and it took off 3 blocks. But it redeposited on the other end, in which the island grew. I'm not so sure that we will ever solve the problem in Wild Dunes or the East End by continually spending money and throwing it in and taking money away from the islanders for the quality of life that we expect from you guys to have on this island. We're just not getting it. We have seen you spend money for day troopers. You want the bathhouse downtown. Is that for the residents? No, it's for the day troopers. You put in money down there at the end of the island. Is that for the residents? Some of them, that end. Most of it's the private club at the other end. You put a drainage system in, and that was from 53rd to 57th. We were included in that in the beginning. I talked to the engineer. Couldn't figure out why we were left out. And I heard comments, but I don't know how much truth is in it, that they did, people in Wild Dunes did not want to include, because we were not part of Wild Dunes, 53rd is. They didn't want our water to go down their street, in their pipes, and we got cut out. And we still have a problem with our water and drainage in our system. I don't understand that. But going back to the, I got sidetracked a little bit, but going back to the recreational center, it's a cardiac unit, it's an exercise room. The one that we have now, it would be an improvement for the people on this island. It would be an improvement for the community. I heard comments from people who are not going, and that they went, they get feelings of claustrophobia. There's limited equipment. There's not even room to stretch out to do sit-ups without blocking the door. And people fear of sometimes being in that room, fear of elbow attacks from people beside them using their machine. Now, I know that money is tight, and I know that you have a reason for voting and not voting and how you spend your money. But that is for the citizens on the island, more than anybody else. Who uses it? It's open free. There's no charges for it. But there's no reason why you can't charge and the people of this island use it. It's convenient. I was curious to know and did some research and was interested to find out. Then our sister island, Sullivan's Island, they don't have a recreational center. They would like one, but they don't have it because they don't have the money, which is what y'all are saying about the cardiac room. I asked them about the cardiac room. What are they doing about it? And if they had one, how they worked it? And they said, well, I'll tell you what. We've got a council that's willing to compromise. They're willing to deal. And the way we worked it out with the Mount Pleasant Rec Center is that basically we pay half the fee, they pay half the fee. But they have to be a qualified resident of Sullivan's Island for us to do that. So they answer the need of the people on the island by doing that. There's nothing wrong with a good compromise or a good deal. If you don't believe it, ask Donald Trump. The other part is they would like to have a swimming pool, to answer one of the councilman's question about rather have a swimming pool. They said, we can't afford it. I said, what do you do about it? They said, well, we worked out a deal with the Sand Dunes Club, and the residents, if they're residents, they go down there and they can buy a summer membership for $100 and use the pool anytime they want to, but they have to be a qualified resident, and we have to sign off on it. So they've made deals, and they're making it work for their citizens. Somehow we don't do it. Now let's look at Isle of Palms. We do have a small cardiac room and an exercise room in the rec, but it is small, and it's too small to do the service that we need. You want to do things for the old people that live here, that's one thing you can do, is make it fit and useful more than it is now. But it's amazing, I don't know about the fire department and how much cardiac room exercise equipment they have, but I do know that Wild Dunes has 2, and they're underutilized. And if you look at our numbers from Norma Jean, ours is probably not mandatory that everybody's there and it's full every hour. There's enough residents there probably to justify it, but not enough to say that it's going to be full every time they turn around. Has anybody ever thought about making a deal with Wild Dunes? Nobody wants to pay $13,000 to get a social and swim membership to Wild Dunes. We care less. But we would like to have exercise equipment to use it locally, close by. Swimming pool, same thing. Has anybody ever thought about making a deal with them? We go and help them. We helped them with the drainage we didn't? Well, supposedly.
Well, that area that you're referring to is not part of Wild Dunes.
Well, it was at one time considered part of it. They're paying their $748 a year.
They don't pay anything.
Well, one of the residents told me they did, so I have to rely on that. But anyway, we take our money and we help put sand down there. What did we get in reciprocity? What did we get as the deal from that? We spent the money. We don't get anything back in return. Anyway.
Can you wrap it up?
Huh?
Can you wrap it up?
Am I allowed more time or less time? I didn't realize there was a time limit.
Well, we tried to, but.
Well, I never heard that.
You're generous.
Okay. 2 and 3. The second thing I would like to do is talk about the traffic. The traffic on the Isle of Palms is terrible. And it gets worse during the summertime. And it's not unusual to be driving 20, 25 miles an hour behind somebody and stop because a trash truck or cars wanting to park. But I suggested one time, it's a perfect setup to do a turnabout from 21st to 41st Street one way back to Waterway and making it a runabout, making a lane for the bicycles and one for the trash truck, people pushing carriages, and all that. But it basically, we'd like to see an improvement of it for the safety of the people and the flow of the traffic. Traffic moves slowly but on checkout times on Saturday and Sunday. The people from Wild Dunes balk it up from that end of it. We can't get out sometimes. We don't even try to get out on the weekends. We would like to see, though, to make that work, you got to think of things like a uniform speed limit throughout the island of 35 miles an hour. Don't know why 41st and Waterway are less. There's more kids and cars on Palm Boulevard that's 35 than there's in a day's time than they are in a month on those streets. There's probably, you could do it by looking at the number of stop signs, the frustration from the drivers, from the trash trucks, et cetera. It goes on and on and on, just thinking about what improvements could be made to our traffic. With a new hotel that's planned for Wild Dunes, it's going to make it worse. And we will not be able to move on this island if we don't do something about it. And the third thing nugget that I want to throw out is the drainage system. The drainage of our streets, it's bad in Charleston, but it's bad here too. It's bad everywhere when we have floods and water the way we've done. But for in the month of August, I think, if I'm not mistaken, there were 2 times that you could hardly drive on Palm Boulevard because the water was there. We actually need to do something. Instead of putting money in sand, we need to think in terms of how we can move this water off the streets so that traffic can flow. It's sort of dangerous, and most times you can't even go through it. The last few times that we've had rains here, it's been so high on the wheels that you didn't want to drive through it. But it's been bypassed sometimes with us. But I would like for you to think about something new besides the marina. I don't have a boat, so it doesn't bother me one way or another, but I would like to see it improved in the looks of it there. But I would like to say that there's some things here that could improve for the citizens and residents of this island. And again, think about the rec room, think about the drainage, and hopefully some deals along the way so that we can enjoy the island more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Very good. Anyone else wishes? I don't see anybody moving. I hear something. No. All right. No other individuals wish to address us. We're now up to the point where we're going to hear from Kirby Marshall, who's going to present the current plans of the marina enhancement and community revitalization.
Leave this one up here for now. You've got little plans to look at as well. It was just over 2 years ago from today that many of us gathered in this room to conduct a series of stakeholder meetings as to what the marina is, what it isn't, and what maybe it should be. Those stakeholders groups included the city staff, the planning commission, the city council, marina tenants, and lastly, a full group of Isle of Palms residents, citizens. We heard and gathered their comments and ordered them in the series of frequency. The top comments we heard at that point in time, back in 2015, were that there were parking concerns on the site and the adjacent streets around the marina. We heard that any redevelopment of the marina should provide benefits for the residents of Isle of Palms. We heard the various stakeholder groups imploring and asking for more community and open space at the marina. We heard the need for better pedestrian access and safety around the marina site. We heard other things, such as providing access and a separate launch for non-motorized vessels, providing signage improvements, improving traffic flow around the marina site, providing access for bikes and golf carts. We heard that the Intracoastal Dock was underutilized in its current state. We heard various things about dry stack that I will not repeat. After that series of meetings, we also launched a website to garner further comments from citizens and interested parties. We gathered that information, and we also conducted at that point in time a series of engineering assessments, an engineering condition assessment of the existing infrastructure at the site, the docks, the drainage, the seawall, some of the other utilities on the site. We conducted a marina and dry stack market assessment to determine the need for the slips, the dry stack potentially, the boat ramp at the subject site. We conducted a pretty detailed parking and traffic assessment of the site, outlining the needs for parking of the various enterprises and uses at the subject site. We conducted then, developed a couple of plans, one with dry stack, one without, and conducted a financial analysis of both plans and discussed those with the council and presented some of that information as to potential lease revenues and things of that nature with regard to each plan. We also conducted a regulatory analysis to see what we could do within the envelope of the site. How far can we go out into the Intracoastal? How far could we go out into Morgan Creek? And what could we do on the upland? What do we need to provide in terms of parking and things of that nature? It was a very detailed analysis that was provided to the council and presented to the council on a number of occasions and provided in a detailed summary book. Subsequent to that effort, we hosted and participated in many, many public meetings, gave many presentations on the plan, hosted feedback from the council, committees, and other groups, hosted public comments that we got at these various meetings and through the project website. We heard from various committees, probably most frequently the Real Property Committee, who has a distinct interest in this Isle of Palms asset. We heard citizen feedback, and we heard and cooperated and interfaced with the tenants of the site, all of them, on a regular basis at these meetings and outside of these meetings in an informal basis. All of that work led to the genesis of the plan you see in front of you today. Some of the tenets that we held through the process in dealing with the council, Real Property Committee, hearing from the public, was we really strive to provide public access to the waterfront, not just for boaters, but for everybody. To provide and create a park-like atmosphere, to create that park-like atmosphere at the water's edge, to bring the citizens to the water, not just the folks that can afford a large boat or a small boat to keep at the marina, but for everybody. Create a place where citizens can come together. Create a place that engenders civic pride. Create a place where you can take your family and friends when they come to visit the town, the city. Transforming this marina, this working marina, into a place that feels public, a place that welcomes everyone, even if you're not buying or renting something. And provide a place for citizens to sit and enjoy the water. Provide a place for children to fish and learn about the waterway. I think we've accomplished all of these things and more with this plan. And I know most of you are intimately familiar with all the details of the plan. There's been some minor changes over recent weeks in working with Real Property and citizens and tenants, and I want to review the plan and those minor changes with you now, and then field some questions and have some further discussion. I don't know how I'm going to do this with the mic. Will it reach?
There you go.
I want to walk around the site, first from the upland side and then from the water side. Entering the marina, one of the things that we heard loud and clear through the public and planning process was to provide safe pedestrian access. We've done that immediately on the Deweese Island Marina side. We've created an extra wide pedestrian path to allow all walkers and bicyclists a free and safe access outside the realm of vehicular traffic immediately upon encountering the marina. That ties into a series of sidewalks, bike rack, things of that nature to enable those pedestrians to access the shore. There's a wonderful waterfront promenade that's been incorporated around the marina site. It is bisected by the boat ramp, but there's a safe passage area at the top of the boat ramp to enable pedestrian access across that area. The site has been segmented into 3 areas of vehicular traffic. The first enables access to the store and the commercial activities at the docks in this area. It enables folks that just want to come to the store to buy some ice cream or milk or what have you to easily access the store and not have to get caught up in the boat ramp traffic or the traffic going to the restaurant and parking. We have dedicated parking immediately adjacent to the store. We also have a large golf cart parking area in this area. I don't think it's allowable by state law for folks to come over the Isle of Palms connector on a golf cart. So this is a definitive area that provides immediate, tangible benefit to the residents of the island to enable access, better access to the site. In this area, there's also boat parking for trailers. It's tucked in and tucked away a little bit more than what is out there now, which in my opinion is an eyesore. There's a little bit less than what's out there now, but the amount of storage was developed and vetted with the tenants' feedback. In addition to the 11 dedicated trailer parking spaces, there are 9 flex use spaces that could be used for standard vehicular parking or trailer parking, depending on the season and depending on the need. There's also plenty of car parking in this area and ADA accessible parking for folks wanting to access the store and the various amenities in this area. A utility shed, similar to what Brian has out there now, has also been incorporated in the plan, tucked back. A nice area of green space adjacent to the promenade, a little bit expanded from what's out there now. The bike rack, as I mentioned, all are encompassed in this area. The second area of access into the site really is intended for 2 main reasons. One, access to the boat ramp for trucks and trailers. In marina planning, a central tenet is to separate your standard vehicular traffic from your boat ramp traffic. We've really strived to do this, and that's a big problem that we see at the existing site. There's confusion, regular vehicles, trailers, where do I go, where do I park, how do I bisect this area? There's no traffic flow or pattern. This second area provides a clear and definitive access for trucks and trailers to enter and approach the boat ramp in 3 staging lanes, 2 of which go by a slightly relocated fuel station, which was placed there at the behest of the tenant, the operator, real property, and other stakeholders to create that ease of access through there. There is a bypass lane that allows vehicles that want to go down and get gas to go and get gas and then exit the ramp and trailer parking area more easily. 3 access points, 3 boat lanes are maintained at in this plan. A dedicated tie-down area for folks coming out of the water has been established, and 57 dedicated boat trailer parking spaces have been provided in this plan. That's a substantial increase from what's out there now, and I'll go into numbers in just a minute. Included in these 57 spaces are 26 expanded trailer parking spaces that are 50 feet long. These would accommodate the trucks and trailers of folks that have the big F-250s and may have a contender behind their boat. That'll allow those folks to park in here, not bang mirrors, and be able to fit in there easily. There are also 31 traditionally sized parking spaces for folks with smaller vessels like me. So that's this second area, completely segregated from the store access, keeps the boat trailer parking separate to the maximum extent possible, and also incorporates the fuel. The third area is up here, and it provides access to the restaurant and the various activities that go on this portion of the site, including what we now have as a public city dock, which I'll talk more about in a moment, a couple of commercial activities, coastal expeditions, which is the kayak tours, and then a relocated tidal wave water sports operation on a relocated and refurbished Intracoastal Dock. Appropriate ADA parking throughout this area, a small dedicated area for restaurant parking with ADA access here to facilitate their valet service and those things. A dedicated service area for the restaurant with a gate and shield, elimination of the dumpsters, which are such an eyesore along the Intracoastal Waterway, and integration of additional golf cart parking in this area to allow residents to come down to the water and experience this portion of the site. Bicycle parking, again, for pedestrian and bicycle access. The promenade continues around this area, providing additional benefits and enjoyment and access to the water, replete with benches and swings to enable people to sit there and really passively enjoy the water. Potentially included future resident and kayak and stand-up paddleboard storage area, as well as a future consideration for a restroom facility in this area that will lighten the load of the restroom use, the store, and the restaurant as it currently stands. A sidewalk on this portion of the site along the access road provides safe pedestrian access really all the way around the marina facility, enables folks to enjoy the entirety of the site without watching where they go or watching where the next vehicle may be coming from. This also eliminates the haphazard vehicular parking along the ditch that leads out to the Intracoastal Waterway. So it cleans up the site immensely. From a waterside perspective, I mentioned a public city dock, something that isn't there now. There's not a place where folks can go down to and touch the water at the marina unimpeded. The relocation of tidal wave water sports to a refurbished and slightly relocated Intracoastal Dock makes that public city dock possible. ADA access would be provided to this public city dock, as well as a public use kayak and stand-up paddleboard launch to allow folks, residents, to come down, park their car, unload their gear, walk down a nice 80-foot long, gently sloping, ADA accessible ramp and launch their paddleboards, come back, park, and enjoy the waterway. The Intracoastal Dock has been, from our initial conversations, largely underutilized. It's poorly configured for the intended use. There are short finger piers. There are piles that are offset from the short finger piers. The slips are wide. Technically, they're 30-foot long slips. Practically, a 20-foot boat is about as big as you can safely and easily moor in that area. What we propose to do in this plan is to remove the finger piers and the piles, relocate the dock out waterward to gain more water in this area, push it out towards deeper water, refurbish it, clean it up, fix it up, put new utilities on here, relocate tidal wave water sports to this area, which gets them slightly farther away from the adjacent residential uses in this area, and still keeps them a reasonable distance away from the mouth of Morgan Creek, where a large volume of boat traffic can be. Small platforms and building structures, floating, would be incorporated into this renovated and refurbished Intracoastal Dock to provide tidal wave water sports the same level of operational capacity that they have now, or improved. The rest of the dock would be used, and I think this is a point that's up for discussion later during council, depending on the outcome of the discussions regarding Morgan Creek Grill's lease. The rest of this dock at the Intracoastal Dock could be used for additional residential slip space. Not going to discount the importance of restaurant dockage. I agree with Mr. Dodds that having a restaurant on the waterfront is important for this site, and it's important to provide dockage to that restaurant. That's one thing we see. We live in the city of Charleston, the area of Charleston, and we think that there's a lot of waterfront destinations. Well, there's really not. You think of Shim Creek, you think of Morgan Creek Grill, you think of very few where you can take a boat, dock, and go dine. So incorporating dockage is important, if not here, then at another location in the marina. But for now, this plan shows that the rest of the Intracoastal Dock would be used for additional recreational slips, accessed by an ADA accessible gangway. Coastal Expeditions would be relocated to a small floating platform in this area, segregated from the jet ski traffic to provide them use in this area. The rest of the docks on Morgan Creek would be totally demolished and replaced. They've reached the end of their useful life. We've documented that through our engineering evaluation. The utilities on the docks have also reached the end of their useful life. It's time for them to go. This represents an aggressive but vetted plan to slightly expand the space available on the docks, more so for navigation rather than slip space. We are, as I mentioned, limited to how far we can go out into Morgan Creek. This represents an aggressive but achievable goal of expanding out and providing more space within this dock. These docks would be used for primarily Isle of Palms residents, but also transient use. What does that mean? Is it for the residents or is it for the transients? Well, it depends. During the summer, a large portion of the docks are used by Isle of Palms residents. In the wintertime, many Isle of Palms residents choose to pull their boats out of the water to protect the hull from marine growth and fouling when the boats aren't used as much. That also coincides with the fall transient migration down the Atlantic Intracoastal Waterway, which is the largest transient waterway in the United States. So in the fall, when some of the residents pull their boats out, there's demand for transient boats to utilize some of this dockage. Same thing occurs in the early spring when the snowbirds head back north. Some of this dockage is used for transients. Brian Berrigan and I have had several conversations about this, and he does endeavor to provide these docks available to residents first. There's not an overwhelming demand by residents to fill up all these docks on a year-round basis. So he fills them on a first-come, first-served basis with priority given to residents. It's a management tactic that Brian uses and uses effectively. There is some space in this area adjacent to the restaurant that we discussed and contemplated could be used to provide dockage access for Morgan Creek Grill, which we all think is important for this waterfront restaurant. Maintain the 3-lane boat ramp, as I mentioned. This area of dockage here becomes really a dedicated commercial dockage area. We have the fuel dock out here. We have several jet docks in this area that would provide dockage for the various inshore charter fishing operations that occur out of the marina now, and the stand-up paddleboard rental operation that currently operates the marina. In addition, the Osprey, which is a tour boat, would be placed in this area, an offshore charter boat in this area, and the 3 slips that the eco tours, Barrier Island eco tours, currently utilize would be incorporated into this area as well. That really segregates the commercial use from the residential use, which traditionally doesn't mix. You don't want to go down and enjoy your boat typically on a holiday weekend and have a scourge of tourists trump by you going on a tour boat every few hours. So it segregates that, and it enables a denser application of dockage in this area. These are all licensed captains, obviously familiar, skilled in boating safety. We can squeeze those folks into a tighter area than if we had a mixed use or residential use in that area. But that is the summary of the proposed plan. I have a few nuggets of my own. Bring it up. Some of these numbers are in response to Councilmember Ferenza's questions. I'm sure you may have more, and by all means, after we go through, I welcome them. This is a comparison between the existing conditions at the site and the proposed improvements. Standard parking spaces, 161 at the current site, 150 at in the proposed plan. How could that be? ATM, you've studied this project for 2 years. You know parking is critical and paramount. How could you propose a plan that has less spaces? This is a number that we can get to utilizing surveys and AutoCAD and satellite imagery. I think we heard it earlier tonight. If you go down to the project site, you don't know where you can park. You don't know if you can park in the area designated for the water sports. You don't know where you can park along the fence. Some signs show this, some show others. We're not sure this is an accurate number, except on paper for engineering folks like us to describe. Truck and trailer parking spaces in the existing plan, or the existing site, 33. In the proposed plan, 57. That was something we heard loud and clear through the process. We need more truck and trailer parking spaces. We've got to get those trucks and trailers off 41st. Get them off Waterway to benefit the residents, to clean them out of there. Golf cart spaces, right now there's maybe 10, if you can find them. In the proposed plan, there's 44. As I mentioned, I'm not coming over the connector in my golf cart. These are for residents. Upland boat storage, we do have a marked decrease. Again, that was done because we have constraints in terms of the size of the site in conjunction with the marina operator who utilizes and leases those sites. However, we do have some flexible parking. This flex parking in the existing plan has more to do with additional boat ramp trailer parking than just boat trailer storage. The flex parking at the existing site occurs in this area. Sometimes you have cars there that are going to Morgan Creek Grill. Sometimes you have trailers there. Sometimes you have both. It's tough to say. The flex parking in the proposed plan is in this area. Very clearly designated, utilized either for vehicles, standard vehicles, or for trailer parking when demand requires. The total dockage space. This is, again, something you're going to question me on, probably. Existing plan, 2,685 linear feet of dockage. Proposed plan, 2,675 feet, 10 feet less. How could I stand up here and tell you this? Well, again, I think it's a function of what's really functional. We talked about this dockage on the Intracoastal Dock. We counted each one of those slips as fully functional, 30-foot slips. Are they really fully functional 30-foot slips? No, they're not. We also have the constraints that I described with regard to expansion out into the waterways that limit what we can do. We were never tasked to maximize the amount of dockage space at this site. I don't think that was ever the goal. We have various uses of the site that need to be accommodated. We have a boat ramp, which is critically important to the site for residential access to the water. It's very difficult to maximize marina space, dockage space, when you have all those factors at play. We tried our best to accommodate each one of those various uses within the plan, and this is where we landed. In the existing conditions, there's about 1,113 linear feet of commercial dockage. There's about 1,045 in the proposed plan, so it's a slight decrease of commercial dockage. In the existing plan, there's about 1,572 linear feet of resident/transient, depending on the season, dockage space, and an increase to 1,630 in the proposed plan. So a slight decrease in commercial space, a slight increase in resident/transient dockage space. I have one or two other figures. Councilmember Ferenz asked, what percentage of the marina site is pervious? Pervious meaning allowing for the water to infiltrate or drain out. We heard some more about drainage tonight. If you count all the gravel space at the site now and all the grass and other areas that are typically pervious, we come up with 59%. I think all of us who have been out there after a rain shower or storm can tell you that that gravel out there is so old and so compacted it is not pervious. It takes a while for that water to evaporate or drain off. We visited the site after several storms. I had one of our senior civil engineers look at this, and he suggested that really and truthfully only 20% of the site is pervious based on the real conditions out there. In the new plan, 42% of the site will be pervious, and that's a real number. It will include state-of-the-art drainage systems for stormwater management and control. How is the stormwater runoff currently managed? The existing stormwater system at the site is effectively clogged. We went out there and looked at it. It's non-functional in many places and highly influenced by tidal flows, especially with the ditch along 41st. Runoff runs uncontrolled for quality and quantity into the adjacent ditch and sometimes overland straight into the waterway. Other times, we just have to rely on evaporation. How will the runoff be managed in the new plan? The proposed stormwater management system for the proposed plan will control the flows to limit the tidal influences and intrusion into the stormwater management system. A purpose-designed collection system will occur throughout the site and discharge into underground stone beds that will filter water and clean it prior to exiting into the ditch or into the waterway. Piping will be limited to save costs. If possible, a portion of the intercepted water that's taken into the storm drains will infiltrate laterally into the soils and evaporate due to the sponging effect of the soil, or feed the vegetation that we see throughout the site. The roof drainage of the existing store and restaurant can also be directed to cisterns or other collection systems to be used in irrigation. We're talking about a complete redevelopment of this site. That will include a complete, thorough, and up-to-date, state-of-the-art, green collection system for stormwater management. What percentage of parking slots are boats and trailers currently? I take that to mean what percentage of the parking spaces on the site are used for the boat ramp, the trucks and trailers? It's 13 to 18%, depending on whether or not you include the flex parking. What percentage of parking slots in the new plan will be used for truck and trailer parking? 21%. We have 57 beautiful new spaces. You asked what percentage of parking spaces are used for resident cars, golf carts, and resident bicycles. There's no way to tell that. It's not controlled or managed in a resident versus non-resident usage. I can tell you that I would venture to say 99.9% of the golf carts are residents.
Same with bicycles, I don't know.
Same with the bicycles. The cars, they're coming from all over, and the parking spaces aren't sold in that manner. Similarly, I would expect 99% of the bicycles and golf carts in this new plan to be for the residents, and the parking, it would be difficult to say. What percentage of dock space is currently commercial? 41%. What percentage of dock space is commercial in the new plan? We're coming down to 39%. So that slight decrease. What percentage is residential currently? Residential/transient. 59% in the existing. We're coming up to 61% in the proposed plan. Lastly, it was asked, how much green space do we have in the existing plan versus the proposed plan, as that was one of the central tenets of our task as part of this planning process. Currently, there's about 3/4 of an acre of green space. It's not managed, it's not planned, it's not really maintained very well, it's just kind of there. Maybe it's dirt, maybe it's grass, maybe there's a tree there. In the proposed plan, we'll have just over an acre of purpose-designed, beautiful, planned, and executed landscaping throughout the marina site and make it much more welcoming to folks coming in.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Mr. Mayor,
You got more?
well, first of all,
Great
I want
questions.
to thank you, Kirby, for taking the time to answer these questions. One of my concerns is that in somewhere I saw where all of the driveway spaces are going to be asphalt. The parking spaces are going to be pervious. They're going to be gravel, whatever. So that was one concern, because right now we have very little asphalt out
Yes.
there. The second thing was this large, I think you call it a promenade or drop-off space or whatever, that's all concrete and it goes all the way around, correct? And that's
Yes.
not there right now.
There is a small amount of that there.
Small, but
certainly not of
nothing
this
like this.
magnitude, no.
And that sits right next to the launch site,
Here,
right next
Yes.
to the launch area.
yes.
My concern is the runoff from that, and you're right next to the gasoline pumps. How are we going to control the runoff from all of that hard surface from not getting into Morgan Creek, basically through the, but you said that there's going to be some state-of-the-art.
I can answer
Okay.
that. I'll tackle the first question first. All of the drive areas, as you mentioned, a little bit difficult to see on this plan. I'll get a little bit better plan that I've shared with Linda that has this color coded. All of this drive area in here, this parking area, this drive area, all through here, this parking area adjacent to the restaurant, and this drive area would all be paved asphalt. One thing that we've seen, and I mentioned tonight, was that we have ponding in the gravel now. It's a continual maintenance issue for Brian and his staff to maintain the potholes. And it compacts, and he has to put more in there, and it's less pervious, and the situation just, it gets worse and worse. So to prevent that, and to accommodate these trucks that are getting bigger and bigger, taller and taller, heavier and heavier, coming into the site, towing these big boats, and the buses, and the garbage trucks, and everything else that accesses the site, we do propose to make that asphalt. The question about the boat ramp is a good one. We faced a very similar situation in Anderson County at the Green Pond Landing Event Center, which was used to host the 2015 Bassmaster Classic. It's the biggest bass tournament in the world. We designed a 6-lane boat ramp at that site. 3 lanes got built in the first phase, so it's very similar to this project. We worked very closely with the civil engineer to create a drainage system that managed the stormwater runoff and prevented as much as humanly possible from entering Lake Hartwell. That's a trick by boat ramp. And I'll tell you why. Because if you obviously have to have the boat ramp sloping down towards the water from some point. You don't want any more than absolutely necessary amount of runoff coming down that boat ramp. However, as you slope the rest of the runoff away from the boat ramp, you don't want to create a situation where you have a peak in the drive surface between the access point where someone might be backing down and the ramp itself, because at that point in time, the trailer goes over the edge and the tongue of the trailer would impact the peak. It would drag. It just can't work. So we worked very closely with a civil engineer in the Greenville area to solve that problem. And it included sloping away from the ramp in a manner that honored that maximum peak allowance and kept the rest away from the ramp. Here, your point about the fuel is very well taken. We can certainly have, the opportunity to slope that away to catch basins on the opposite side of the ramp.
Okay, thank you. There must be, Ted, please. Whoa.
A couple comments and then a question, Kirby. I want to thank not only Kirby and council and staff, but all the citizens that have participated in this project. Anybody that's worked on a project of this scale knows it requires a lot of analysis, content, openness, and I think this project is a good example of that. I'm going to ask Kirby in a minute to validate that statement. It's not perfect. We're affected by the environment in which it sits. It could be different from various different perspectives, but for 2 years, for the effort that's gone into it, I think we're at a place to go forward, and we should be confident in our collective responsibilities in that regard. Kirby, I'm going to take a different approach to my question. Some phrases or descriptions. I'd like you to respond into the question. And I'd like all of us to consider this. As it relates to this project, has it been thorough, comprehensive, transparent, inclusive, open, communicative, thoughtful, safe, financially responsible, improvement for infrastructure, and has the process been fair? Kirby and his firm, as you probably are well aware, have worked on many of these programs in many different communities. He doesn't have an axe to grind in this regard. He's trying to put forward the best product and be objective. So the question is, with regards to those phrases that I described, do you think that council, staff, the citizens, and the stakeholders that have been involved have honored these phrases and characterizations I've provided?
Yes, as much or more on this project than any other we've worked.
Thank you.
He used to be taller before he started. Right? Others? Yes,
Mayor.
Jimmy.
Kirby, great presentation. I tasked the mayor, city administrator, and also our planning commission to start thinking about the future. And I keep on hearing drainage and drainage and drainage all over the Isle Palms. And, you know, I would like to see the future where we start using pervious concrete. You know, I don't know why or how much difference in cost that is, but it would certainly make a lot of difference. I mean, we've got a 60-40 lot coverage on Isle Palms, and we're already see that because of what we have. But again, just taking the concrete and making it a pervious concrete. I've seen trucks load of water poured on it where it just goes right through.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, just something to think about.
Absolutely. That's a great point. I think there's going to be many opportunities if the project moves forward during the design process to incorporate things just like that within the framework of the budget that we've already worked up. Engineering solutions like that are becoming more cost effective on a daily basis. So,
good.
Great point.
Just one
Others,
last
please.
question. I was surprised to see this pad around the store is a more recent addition than what I'd seen like early on. We didn't have that sort of thing, right? And the function of that is just to make it easier for people, because you're not parking there. It's just where you drop them off. And my question is, because this only affects one of the lessees, why are we putting so much emphasis in this particular area to do that? We haven't done it anyplace else.
That's a good question. It's a little bit of both. I think I mentioned that the brown hatched area here, particularly in this area, would enable the easier drop-off for buses accessing the site, particularly with school children during the week when the boat ramp would not be as busy. It creates a gathering point for those children, safe, gets them out of traffic, and guides them down to the eco tours and those services pretty easily. In addition, I'm sorry. Okay. In addition, those of us that use the marina and boat ramp know that it poses a challenge when you approach the ramp and you've got to get out and grab your parking pass and maybe go to the store and get some ice or some unit, something else. You need a place to drop off your folks and for them to get out of traffic easily. This is one of the most congested areas of the site currently. We wanted to provide safe pedestrian access and drop-off points not only for the kids, but for the ramp users in this area, for their folks to come and go as well.
The traffic that comes into the first, it says car parking spaces?
Yes.
So you come in there and then you turn around and come back out?
You would come in here.
Right.
If you go to the store, park, go to the store, and you can, this is a two-way road, you can come out.
So this isn't a drop-off point for the eco tours?
This is not a drop-off point.
Okay.
The drop-off point for the eco tours would be right
Is-
over there.
is up further.
And
Okay.
the bus access would be through the boat ramp. Again, this occurs on the weekdays, school days, so the ramp's not as busy. And those buses could park in one of these oversized trailer parking spaces we've designed.
Okay. I'm looking left, right. Any other questions for Kirby? First of all, I appreciate your time. This is obviously a labor of love. 2 years worth, but it's not.
Thank you.
Not something done.
Mayor, I just want to recognize Mr. Mann in the blue. He's also with ATM. And every time we have changed something on this plan, it has kind of fallen into his court to make that change. And so I'd like to thank him for his patience with us and relabeling things and coming up with alternatives.
So before us is the question as to whether we approve the plan as it's currently presented with the changes. We approved the plan previously. There have been some minor, I say minor changes, some changes to it, and we need to consider that for approval.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, but we just received this at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Are we not given a 24-hour material time before we can vote on something? I thought we had agreed that all materials would be before us at least 24 hours in advance of the vote.
I don't think there's a requirement by code for that. I think it's, and also the only changes really was relabeling. Everything's the same with the exception of relabeling what used to be labeled the Morgan Creek docks as, I think it says proposed residential docks. So this is essentially the same as what you've seen except for that label, and then I think also adding the future resident kayak SUP storage. Is there any other change that you guys?
Those are the things.
Everything else you had seen before.
So the 24 hours is not set in stone? We don't?
No, that's the goal we put to staff. Is the 24-hour requirement to have it on the agenda, which it is, so that part has been met, and that's the only legal requirement we have. So, nothing else? Then I'll make a motion to approve the plan as presented on, I don't know what date is on this document. September 26th? That's today.
Are we done?
Yeah, yes.
Second.
All right.
Discussion.
Future discussion. Yes.
This is a vote for the presentation for the next 2 times for the public. Not saying that we.
Correct. No,
Right.
no,
Okay,
correct.
just making sure.
This is subject
This is
subject to change for quite a while.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Definitely subject to change. We could look for permitting and it would be changed or whatever.
Final
So,
design.
so this is the plan so far, and we intend to follow it, but there could be changes. Even that space in front of the store. if that became an issue. Or pervious concrete.
Or paver blocks, or whatever else we want to throw at it. Marty has a
Mr.
point.
Mayor, I think I'm the only one on council that was sitting on council when we bought the marina, which we saved it from development, and we're making it better. One of our visions back then was we're going to get it paid for, which is almost paid for, then we can start doing improvements and add some green space. It's all right here. I like this very much.
Okay, no other comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that part passes. The other thing is to let everybody know, if they haven't already read ahead, that tomorrow we have a presentation.
Open house.
Open house, excuse me, it's not a presentation. Open house at the Marina site for the plan, and there'll be walk-around display areas where you can visualize exactly what's going to happen, and Kirby will be there, and others will be scattered around the site, so that anybody have any questions, they can. If he didn't answer it tonight, you can ask him tomorrow. So that's planned for there, and then there'll be an information meeting, 5 o'clock on Thursday, the 12th, at the Rec Center with similar graphics and details, and folks there. Kirby, don't leave town. So, thank you all.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
This information, I received a lot of phone calls since this came out, and one of the phone calls asked if a group had been developed to push the amendment forward. They thought that this material was sent out by a private group that was pushing for the referendum. I think that by not signing it, by not making, it has the seal on it, but it did not say that this was information coming from City Hall, and there was no signatures
The
on it.
envelope was from City Hall.
But there was no signatures on it.
Well, this is an announcement, not a letter.
Where would you?
But it goes into
Still an announcement, factual announcement.
Okay. Well, in the next announcement, I would suggest that this no tax increase, bold and underline, needs to say no tax increase as long as our tourist funds are maintained at the same level they are now. Because if they are not, we will not be able to pay it without a
It's not
tax
the tourist
increase.
funds, it has the volume of lease activity, because the
We
leases.
can't get any more money out of our
No, but the
leases.
leases would suffice.
Well,
to-
2 of the 3 leases are up by the time any of this is going to be done, so you're assuming we can't get more money out isn't really valid.
Oh.
I mean, that's reality, isn't it? By 2020, 2 leases are basically up for renegotiation.
Jimmy,
Okay.
point?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I concur totally with Sandy. I've had numerous telephone calls. In fact, I had to go down and meet with somebody at the Walden's today, that it seemed like it was more of a total pro as opposed to a neutral presentation. So again, I concur totally with what Sandy said.
Well, I think
Mr.
Sandy
Mayor?
started her comment, this is factual material.
No, what I'm saying is it was pro-amendment, pro-referendum.
I disagree. It's factual. It's not pro or con. Those are opinions. I can have a pro opinion, Linda could have a con opinion. Those are opinions. These are facts. Facts chiseled in stone. Square footage, number of parking spaces. It's inherently positive because of what we have now at the marina. It's such a mishmash of everything that obviously anything organized is inherently an improvement.
Okay.
I had a comment. If I may, had somebody call me Sunday morning saying, Jimmy, I thought you had questions about the marina. I said, I do. I have a lot of questions. I'm waiting for the presentations. They said, well, why are you sending out this mail saying that it sounds like to me it came from the city. You're part of the city. If you change your mind, you're not now supporting the marina. I said, I had nothing to do with it. I don't know a thing about it. I have absolutely no idea what's behind it. And if people are confused, where did it come from? Who authorized it? Who wrote it?
Go ahead, Bud.
Okay, we authorized the referendum. We have to do our due diligence to supply information, what these people are asked to vote on. We can't put in a referendum out there and not explain bit by bit what is involved. And we talked about this in the committee meetings, it was in the minutes, you had several times that you saw this. It shouldn't have been a surprise. We are under a deadline, we have a limited time frame, but again, it's neutral, it's fact.
Comment, please. We're elected, so when we get those questions from our constituents, we can inform them. This was an informational piece designed, as was commented earlier, to inform our citizens. If we didn't do that, we're open for criticism. I've had several citizens appreciate having received the information, some of which were more or less informed about the marina redevelopment. I would only ask, and I think we did ourselves, short-sighted ourselves a bit, that in the next communication, of which I understand there will be one, that we provide a timeline and we provide the information where we allowed for all the citizen input, which was numerous as we discussed earlier, and I understand that'll be done.
Okay.
There may not be a timeline, but there will be a quantification of all the minutes. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things, and that was that on August 2nd, I sent everyone a draft of the first draft of the informational piece. All members of council received that. And then on August 3rd, the Real Property Committee discussed it. That information was supplied in packets. Also, at City Council meeting on August 22nd, the fact that we would be sending out informational fact sheet was discussed. Those minutes and also the recordings of those meetings were provided to council. And then the September 15th Real Property Committee minutes also contain it, and of course that went out in your council packets. So there were several occasions where all members of council were aware that information was being worked on to supply to the citizens. And what was contained in the piece was complete factual information.
Was there a reason why it wasn't signed?
It's not a letter.
It's sort of like the flood letter or any other piece of just factual information or a news release or anything else. It's just...
it's not signed then either.
Right.
Mr. Mayor.
Carol?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just think the whole point of the piece was to be as transparent as possible. That was the entire intention of doing it. So if people feel like they're reading something and they're thinking, wow, this sounds so positive, well then maybe it's just because the whole nature of the project is going to make it so much better. I mean, if you're instinctively feeling that, it's just the facts, and it's taking what's there now, which has sort of a sad, dilapidated spirit, and turning it into something we can have so much pride. And it has vision, and it's going to be beautiful, it's going to be accessible, it's going to be, it's just, why not, you know?
You had a comment?
Yes, sir.
It's true.
And not to drill into this, yes, it is very pro and positive and
it's factual.
And factual. But there's also...
It's not pro and positive, it's factual.
But the factual is the reality is we are going to get hit by a hurricane again. That's a fact. Not if, but when. So we have to be careful on how we spend money.
When is it coming, Jimmy? Tell us.
Tell me. We always had it this year.
I know.
20
That's my
years
broken record.
of this.
That's
I know.
Thank you.
All right.
Improve things.
All right, let's move on to reports for Ways and Means Committee, please.
Did we vote?
We voted.
We voted.
Okay, just making sure. Just making sure.
We were just finishing the dialogue. We're losing people here.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
I'm
not to be important.
I'm really struggling. Could I jump ahead?
Oh, yeah, okay, fine. Let's have a motion to amend our agenda to move the Personnel Committee forward.
So moved.
To now.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of amending the order?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Personnel Committee report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Personnel Committee met on September 6th at 3 p.m. The old business was the consideration of a code of conduct for elected and appointed officials.
Attorney Halverson shared the code that she had developed through research in consultation with Attorney Julia Copeland, who is the assistant attorney for the city and also the assistant attorney for the town of Mount Pleasant. They relied heavily on the state of code of ethics, the final version of the Mount Pleasant plan, as well as Myrtle Beach and Columbia. The code of conduct as presented defines the manner in which any sanctions or reprimand would be implemented and would begin with the person perceived to have been the subject of an alleged violation to the code meeting privately with the individual whose actions were being questioned in an effort to resolve the matter. After attempts to resolve the matter privately had been exhausted unsuccessfully, the matter would then be referred to the full body of council as noted in a public meeting. The action would be preceded with a report to council with supporting documents. Any serious infractions, we discussed that, would certainly be taken on to the State Ethics Commission. Per the minutes, and you all have had an opportunity to see the minutes, and certainly they are available to the public. There was very spirited discussion, and I advised any of those that are really interested in this topic to go to the city website, read the personnel meeting minutes rather than my just reading them to you. Obviously, as we're witnessing in our daily lives, social media has taken center stage, with this matter, and I think this matter needs more intensive review, discussion, and reflection as we contemplate how this sensitive subject is going to be handled by the city. In the discussion with the mayor, we'd like to give this some more time and reflection.
Okay, you have it before you. Any discussion on this document that, as I told someone earlier today, I like the 10 little commandments the good Lord passed down to us. I like working with that. However, society today requires us to construct all sorts of legal structures to hold ourselves more accountable. I'm hoping that we never have to employ such a document if we put it in effect. But any other words of wisdom on this?
Yes.
Well, let me have Sandy look that way first. Sorry.
Yeah, well, first of all, in reviewing this, there are so many of the terms are not quantifiable. You use terms like fair and equitable and things like that. If somebody's going to be brought up on sanctions, you better have terminology that makes sure that you're not going to have a lawsuit for defamation of character. The second thing is it gives the mayor and the mayor pro tem some rights and privileges that are not really part of our government. Our government structure is a strong council, weak mayor, which means that the mayor and the mayor pro tem are no more or less a member of the council. So I'm not sure that that portion of this, that needs to be looked at in terms of the form of government. And the second thing, and those of you who know my mother, I told her about this.
Doesn't everybody?
I told her about this, and she said, if any daughter of mine acted, anything other than a Southern lady, you wouldn't need to sign anything. So I think that there's already a code of conduct that is inherent in most of us, just like you said with the 10 Commandments.
Right.
I'm not so sure that a piece of paper is going to change the actions of some, and I think it's an insult to others.
Okay. Well, Ted had.
Okay. Anything we can do to raise our ethical efforts in public service or our conduct for elected officials as well as appointed officials, given the national dialogue that's currently taking place, is a very positive thing. I would ask if this has received the support and approval by both our HR director as well as our attorney.
It was devised by our attorney, actually.
So this language is recommended.
And we did, there was a motion made and recommended, Ms. Friends voted no, but it passed.
So it came out of committee with support. Our attorney has received it, and has our HR director had a chance to review? Well, if we don't address it completely this evening, it's probably a good idea. Would you agree, Linda, that HR review it? Thank you.
I'm going to propose we take this up again, subject to other comments. As we did last year, we had a visioning session before the end of the year, and we should consider this in that context. I don't know where the world's going, but I'd like to make sure we have some control before we get too far down the road. You were going to say something?
And I'd just like to say, I like this, if nothing else, as Councilmember Kinghorn said. By signing this, we are telling you, the citizens, that we're going to be ethical. And you may not believe us, but we're going to be. And we've committed our signature to something saying we will be. I think it's a very positive type thing.
And there's a mechanism, if I understand and read correctly, that there are consequences if we don't adhere to that standard.
Okay, so we'll deal with this later. Patrick, you have another subject.
Well, the clarification of the job descriptions, that everyone got a handout of those, and those that also have been posted. Are there any questions in terms of what's been presented?
So you're making a motion to approve the position description as presented to us?
I am.
Second.
Okay. This is for the city clerk. I guess it's the only one we've got, so you shouldn't get too confused.
What should do wrong?
Is there any other discussion on this? All in favor of the amendments to the city clerk's job description, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
August sweepstakes winners, general government, Marie Copeland. Fire was John, help me. Sescano. Police officer Jonathan Ayer. And Public Works, George Myers. In terms of vacancies of employees, we have one vacant half-time animal control officer still to fill, and we have a full-time recreational specialist that needs to be filled in. My understanding is you're interviewing for that position. If there's no further questions.
All right, thank you very much, Patrick. I hope you're feeling better.
Thank you.
Every day, I hope you're getting better. The fact that you're here with us, thank you for putting yourself at risk coming this far. All right, now we'll move back to the Ways and Means Committee. First of all, I'm going to call your attention to not the committee exactly, but after we had our committee meeting, you received the Moody's Investor Service annual comments on the Isle of Palms. I want to I've had some copies put over here in the corner if anybody wishes to pick up their own copy and put it on the wall if you like, etc. I'll read a couple of comments out of the annual Isle of Palms Moody's report. Isle of Palms has a very good credit position. Its AA1 rating is above the median rating, AA3 for U.S. cities. Notable credit factors include a robust financial position, a strong wealth and income profile, and a healthy tax base. The credit profile also reflects an extremely small debt burden and a moderate pension liability. The financial position of the city is very strong and is slightly favorable to a comparison to the assigned rating of AA1. Isle of Palms fund balance is a percentage of operating revenue, 89.7%, far exceeds U.S. median, and stayed the same between 2012 and 2016. Moreover, the cash balance as a percent of operating revenue, 60.3%, is much higher than the U.S. median. There's charts and other factors in this 4-page analysis, but it's a very good report. I guess we're moving to the top of the AA1 rating if you can read through some of the nuances in these words. But that was good news to receive from our one of the major credit rating companies in possession.
So, excuse me.
Yes.
I read one from the Water Commission, but there's one for the city. Says the same thing.
I didn't see the Water Commission.
Isn't that what, I thought that's what Debbie gave me. Was there not one?
This is
This is the cities.
Yes, the cities.
I can't tell you what Debbie gave you. It would surprise me if she had the Water Commission.
Yeah. Well, I got it at home. I got it at home.
You got it at home, okay, fine. If you need a copy, there's one on the way out. Unless they've been sold out, I don't know.
I doubt that.
Rush for those things. Moving on, we met on the 19th. We had a presentation from our treasurer. We're 2 months into the year. 17% of the fiscal year has flown by. While we're at 17% on a calendar basis, our budgeted expenditures are running at 15%. Our revenue is running at 8%, which is not unexpected, although it's slightly down from last year, partly because all other income, which was the settlements and other factors, is down this year over prior year. And but our rental license income is 96% of where it was this time last year, so nothing to be alarmed at on a revenue or expenditure basis. Our cash position is such that when you consider all of our funds, not considering the stakeholder funds that we have for the beach, we currently have $17.7 million in our cash balance at 8/31. And this time last year, we had $15.2 million, which is about almost $2.5 million more than what we had prior year. $1 million of which is from the beach preservation fee, which is paid by the tourists for management of the beach, and another $1 million in our capital projects over and above what we had last year. And the rest is splintered between the other funds. So that's all good news. Our tourism funds, we had a August with $235,000 in income. So thus far this year, we're 7% ahead of where we were prior year. And then the only other tourism fund that we received funds on was our hospitality tax, which was almost $99,000, which is, again, so far this year, we're 6% ahead of where we were prior year. So those things keep clipping along. And as you read the paper, apparently August with the eclipse was a banner period for the Low Country, for South Carolina, and I suspect for the island, and that will come to us here shortly. We reviewed our projects, the Phase 2 drainage project, which is involving 52nd Avenue to 45th Avenue, $2.7 million. The project has been let, and the contractor is currently laying out the survey work to start his work. He'll start his work at the outfall and work back towards Palm Boulevard, but that will be starting in the month of October, and will be hopefully clear of budget. Beach restoration project, again, the contract has been placed, and with the disturbances, we've had the administrator and our engineers have had a meeting with the contractor, pre-construction I guess OCR was there and others, et cetera. Anyhow, it sounds like they're likely to start in December for that work. The contractor, where he is now, has been delayed because of the various storms, et cetera. So.
Right. And I should just, for purposes of the audience, on the city's website, under administration, there's a tab for beach restoration, and we keep updates at that location regarding, mobilization and everything. So all of this information is there.
And while we didn't discuss it, I can tell you that the engineer has done work, and we are going to make a request not under emergency conditions, but other, I can't remember the term, but the non-emergency conditions for FEMA applications. It's been accumulated by the county, and it's been sent to the state, and the state has to send it to the feds. But we know how much material has been lost in our engineered beach. Our Public Works vehicle washdown project is still running on, and we still owe the contractor more than half the monies for which we've contracted. So hopefully in the near term we can claim victory and have that thing concluded. We went on to propose, and I'll make a motion here to move to establish the operating millage to be 21.3 mils for operations and 3.4 mils, or a total of 24.7 mils for the next fiscal year relative to property taxes. I'll make that as a motion. Do I have a second? That is the same millage we have maintained for a number of years now. We've not raised the revenue requirement that the city's trying to drive from our property taxes for quite a few years. So 24.7 is the motion. So, any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. So we moved on to discuss the, you think you'll have numbers. You ought to look at the sheet that the assessor's office gives us on tax calculations on motor vehicles. You may not know it, but we still have an aircraft registered here on the island somewhere. I haven't found him yet, but you know, he's still paying assessment. I don't know. By the way, we could make a bounty of that if anybody goes out and finds the aircraft. It'd be useful to us. We went on to consider the preliminary positive net result from our fiscal year FY17, which in total was $882,000. The motion was made, and I'll make the motion here, to move $100,000 to our disaster recovery fund, $600,000 to our capital projects fund, and leave the balance in our unassigned general fund. I'll make as a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second.
Question, Dick, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Would you repeat that and explain that?
Explain that, okay. In our general fund, revenue exceeded the expenses. Both the revenue exceeded budget and the expenses were lower than budget, and the combined total was $882,000. And so every year we make a decision as to whether we keep it in an unassigned account, unassigned in our general fund balance, whether we move it, in this case, some to our disaster recovery fund, or we move some of it to our projects fund. The only funding source we have for capital projects is this positive result that we hope to achieve every year. Some years it's more than others. We expected a positive net result when we did the budget for this fiscal year, and we're moving those funds. And we counted on $442,000, I believe, in the budget, and we're now moving $600,000, which is a little more to the projects fund, and we're keeping some in the unassigned balance in our unassigned general fund. The irony is our unassigned general fund we never tap either. So that sits there as a dash pot during the course of the year, so that if revenue and expenses haven't quite matched in the course of the flow of the year, those funds come in and out of our unassigned. But at the end of the year, since we have a balanced budget, we expect always to have at least the same amount of money in our unassigned accounts as we have now, which is roughly will have roughly $2.7 million.
So we had a net plus of over $800,000.
Correct.
That's a good thing, right?
That's a good thing.
And we've done that before?
We do it almost every year, not to the same level, but virtually every year. I can't recite how much, but
We don't want it to be negative.
we never want it to be negative.
It has to be positive.
It really almost always has to be positive. If it even is at zero, we feel, we've missed something.
When has it ever been zero?
I don't know that it's ever
It
been
has
zero.
been negative before. If you look back in some of the old minutes and things of the city, there were times when the city, not during recent times, but a long time ago, when the city ended the year in a deficit, and they were trying to figure out how to fund the deficit.
Like after Hugo?
Well,
I don't remember the exact times. I don't know that it was after Hugo. It could have been. But I read that just recently, and also there was a time when the city.
I can tell you in 1998, the general fund balance went down by $200,000. Now, at the same time, the capital projects went up by $700,000. So I didn't go back and research what we were doing in 1998, but we must have needed funds in the capital projects, and we took $300,000, roughly $200,000, out of our general fund to do that. Other than that, we haven't touched the reserve in the general fund for 20-some years. It goes back to 1991 was the only other time there was any significant change in the general fund, and I think we can collectively recognize that as a result of Hugo.
Yes.
So,
I remember it well.
So the unassigned fund as well as the disaster fund are the two principal funds in our general fund, and they really never get touched at a year-end basis. So with that, Sandy, please.
Are we in a discussion?
Yes,
portion?
yes,
Okay. We're putting $100,000 into disaster recovery, and yet our reports show that we have $152,298 as a FEMA reimbursement for disaster. My question is, why aren't we putting that full amount back into that? Because we know we got, what Linda reported, $500,000 in Irma disaster.
Yes, ma'am.
And if I read correctly in the paper, they have frozen all payments for Matthew. So if they've frozen Matthew, think about what they're going to do with Irma. I don't, I think we're going to be lucky if we get 25 or 50% of our FEMA back. I really think this is the year where they're going to look at our needs and look at other needs, and we may not get that $500,000 back. So I would encourage to, since they gave us $152,000, put that into the disaster rather than $100,000.
It's reimbursement.
It's
It's a reimbursement for personnel, equipment, operating costs related to Hurricane Matthew.
No, I know where it came from. We'll have almost 2.4 million in the disaster recovery, much of which that you're reciting, the $500,000, much of that is under emergency conditions, which will not be frozen by FEMA. They'll be questioning the subsequent non-emergency project worksheets. I don't know what they call non-emergency categories, anything other than category A and B, I guess.
I thought I saw where they froze all payments.
They may have frozen it, but they are also proposing legislation to add, what did I see, $72 billion for disaster recovery. So it'll be unfrozen here shortly.
Some of that $500,000 that are reported to council too, some of it may be insured losses once we file for those claims. Then, so it's not all necessarily FEMA reimbursements. A big chunk of it is then in the berm restoration, for sure.
But we have the additional funds. We talked about having $100,000 and some $1,000 more in unassigned, which we have no use for. I mean, it just sits there. It's only used in dire strait, like when we had you. So we don't have to call it disaster recovery to have funds sitting available to us.
Well, I've got some other ideas for those funds.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
2 noes? Okay. We went on to hear from Donnie Pitts, a very good presentation. He was asked to present, having dealt with 1,000-year flood, Matthew, Irma, etc., from a public works standpoint, not just picking up debris, etc., but from a public works and particularly a storm water management, what he felt the city could be doing, what he was doing. He shared that with us, and then any suggestions he had going forward. And clearly, he suggested, as some of the citizens have tonight, that while we're spending $2-some million on stormwater management from 52nd Avenue to 45th Avenue, we can't stop there. We should be looking further on, and we have other needs, obviously, on the island, and we're going to be doing that. We conditioned ourselves to have a meeting. I think we called it last year, and I guess we'll call it again this year, a visioning meeting where we sit down before the end of the year and give the staff, hear from the staff as far as things like of this matter, but others, but then also give staff some direction as they start to try and build a budget for future years. And I'm certain one of the things will be to increase the frequency in which we deal with stormwater maintenance on the island, particularly the ditches and drains, But of course, that's a complex project because much of the drainage systems on the island is actually in the Department of Transportation's purview and their right-of-ways, and they take great, I won't say they take pride in it, they take great concern if we start stepping on their toes and doing things that they don't recommend. So we'll have to involve them at some point, but I think drainage, with all the water conditionings we've had in the last couple of years, is going to be bigger and better on our diet. But, you know, just look at the magnitude of what we're talking about. Handling 7 blocks of water, moving it from the beachfront back to the outfalls, and spending $2.7 million in that. What, you can just extrapolate what that's going to mean as far as the total cost when we get to something on the island. Recognizing that our total property taxes for every property on the island is only $4.3 million. So it's not a property tax matter. Ma'am.
In 1995, Linda sent me a study that was done by Seabrook Engineering. And there was a referendum at that time, and it was $7 million to do what was recommended by Seabrook. And they had the whole island mapped out, where the ditches should be, where the pipes should go, and so forth and so on. And to that vein, we have Edie's that comes onto the island and has a 5-year turnaround. They do a section of the island, and then they won't go back to that section until 5 years. So, and the whole Edie's project for 5 years is about $480,000, about $500,000. I think in the very near future, we need to be budgeting $500,000 a year and just have that a continual process of cleaning it out. Because if you've seen what's been done recently since these last floods, you see a lot of these open ditches that have not been cleared for a long time now cleared, and residents are positively saying, finally you listened. And I don't know if that was it, or if it was just that was the section that Edie's was supposed to do.
Well, but, you know, in many of these cases, you know, there's turnover. Edie's was there 4 years ago, but now we have new residents, and they don't realize anybody's ever dealt with that ditch. And so
but I think we all realize that you can't leave a ditch for 5 years. That ditch is going to be filled in or caving in or whatever, full of vegetation within at least a year. So I'd really like to see, when to discuss the overall, that we really put, and if we have $2.3 million in unassigned that's never been touched, maybe it's time to touch unassigned for $500,000 a year.
Mr. Mayor, and I'll add to that, prior to 2000, there was no drainage plan at all for the island. I was in the Public Works Department when we decided to contract with Edie and slowly get the island draining again. Granted, a lot of these are tidal ditches. Forest Trail took water from the tidal ditches, not from the tidal surge, as waterway was coming over and the front beach was coming over. So, you know, we basically live in a bowl. We can get rid of some of that water, but if the tide's in and the wind's right, you're not going to go anywhere with that water. So we need to study it.
Okay.
Question?
Ted.
Linda, are you aware of any local governments that are doing seawater level studies that we could collaborate with or begin some long-term planning?
Off the top of my head, nothing comes to mind, but it could very well be that the city of Charleston has embarked on that.
Sullivan's Island?
Maybe. Sullivan's Island, I think their planning commission has started having dialogues in that regard.
Right. So we might want to consider either participating with them or doing something similar with our planning committee.
Okay. You took them up both, didn't you? Yes. I'm moving on. We reported on the fact that we issued I want to compliment staff for the storm preparation, because as soon as the storm hit on Monday, because we knew we took a beating on the front beach areas, we had contractors in here before noon on Tuesday, right after the storm. I signed a contract that afternoon for $246,000 to construct the dune berm that's being built right now. They're up to 400 block along along Ocean, and you may or may not, the press has been all over the fact that they did the end of the island right by Breach Inlet, so anybody coming over the bridge now says, "What's that?" You know? And that's protecting the few homes there that had very little protection in front of them. The intention, of course, is to take this contractor, build a berm all the way down to 10th Avenue. We finally got that approved by OCRM, and then move the equipment and protect the properties along Beechwood East and the Grand Pavilion area in Wild Dunes, where the water is still under the buildings, unfortunately. So that contract has been let and going forward, and we have filed for that under Category B of FEMA, which is emergency recovery, and I think that will move well. We moved on to consider an award of a contract to Master Craft in the amount of $34,500 for the installation of retractable basketball goals at the rec center as part of our capital projects budget. So,
I'll second that.
motion and seconded. Any discussion?
Discussion.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Again, I think the Recreation Department does a great job. We currently have 4 movable basketball hoops that we can move in and move out. Right now, I would just like to see us, even though we have the money, not spend it so we can send our residents the message that I think the drainage is more important than anything else. We can do this later on. We're going to have a new floor in a year. At that time, we can spend the money, but right now, I'd just assume not spend money on basketball hoops when I hear over and over and over again about drainage.
Okay. Any other comments? Carol?
I'll just, this is a budgeted item and something that does improve the gym greatly, so they don't have to move the hoops back and forth, and they can move them up and down for the little kids to the big kids, and just something we have planned for over a year, so. And it
Okay.
is in the budget.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I think it's important that we take care of the children of the island. I mean, this is the recreation center that is used primarily by the children. It's for the children, and I think we'd be remiss in not spending budgeted monies for the purpose which we budgeted.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
1, 2, 3. Okay. Consideration of award of contract to Technology Solutions of Charleston, amount of $29,896.81 under a state contract for access control upgrades for the police department, and Companion Technology Solutions award of $33,197.90 again for access control for the fire department. Make that as a motion.
Second.
Motion seconded. This gets the police into and out of their building and the fire in and out of their building. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. We're up to last item, award of a contract in the amount of up to $25,000 to Fireline for the unbudgeted repair of the 95-foot ladder truck, which is in a degree of distress right now, where it can't stabilize when we put out the outriggers. And this will bring us back into a condition where we can make the truck usable. So I'll make that as a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of fire truck maintenance, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. It means, and that'll be followed by the city council meeting. All right, no meeting from public safety, but any points?
Our next meeting will be on the 9th at 2 o'clock.
Okay, Public Works, any points of order? Nothing. Recreation Committee didn't meet. And Personnel, we've already heard from. So Real Property Committee, please.
Bingo. Okay. Real Property met on September 15th with all members present. The marina tenants gave their summaries of how the storm had affected the marina. The marina store closed Sunday the 10th at 6 p.m. and reopened on Tuesday. So that's fantastic. In addition to minor dock and gangway damage, one of the underground storage tanks was breached and water got into it. The problem was quickly detected and access to the upland tank was blocked. Petroleum Recovery Services was on site on Wednesday. They extracted a large amount of water, but the lines were not cleared, and fuel mixed with water, which inadvertently filled the tank of a moped. That caused the fueling station to shut down again. The recovery service returned and fixed the problem. Also, saltwater damaged electrical components at the docks, and only diesel is available. Repairs were to be complete by the 18th. He also reported that damage to the boats in the marina was mostly cosmetic, and the docks in the Intracoastal were underwater but not damaged. Michael Phim of Tidal Wave Water Sports reports that their docks have been underwater, causing some electrical problems. He commended the city on their efforts in the cleanup of the beach and the administrator for keeping the marina tenants informed before and after the storm. Jay Clark at Morgan Creek said his employees were evacuated and the restaurant was closed from Thursday the 7th through Wednesday the 13th. Since reopening, they've had some sporadic power outages, and he commented that they were still assessing possible damage. Excuse me. A lot of this is sort of redundant to what Kirby had to say. One thing that was sort of new, we discussed, the ATAX committee was presented with the ATM presentation, and they brought up the fact that the ramp really is, the slope isn't correct, and if you back a little bit too far, you're backing your back wheels of your trailer, and then that's going to stop the works. Everything has to be figured out. So we've given that some serious thought, and they've come up with, we could extend the ramp. That's a cost. We could put a curb on the end of the ramp, which is sort of a short-term fix just to stop the wheels of the trailer. We could replace the ramp that is outdated by industry standards. The industry standard is 12 to 16% slope, and ours, the feeling that the steeper the slope, the quicker you're going to get into the water. So our slope is 11%. Mr. Berrigan joined in the conversation and stated that if the referendum passes, he would do a cost sharing on the ramp replacement if we went that way up to $100,000. As I said, you've heard most of everything about the referendum you've ever wanted to know. We discussed at length the mailings and the visuals for the meetings and the website. Also, that's in the details of the minutes. We discussed plans for the presentation tomorrow, 4 till 7. Be there. And October 12th at the Rec Center, 5 to 8. We discussed whether tidal wave would be moved before there was a decision on the whole referendum plan and agreed that this was not practical. We next discussed the Marina Leases. Administrator Tucker noted that one mission of the marina revitalization was to react to citizens' advocacy for more residential uses and specifically more slips to be available to residents. At the last council meeting, we discussed eliminating one of the leases of tidal wave, but council did not show any support for that idea at the time. We did discuss renewing the Morgan Creek lease for the last 3 years with an amendment that would relieve them of their allotted dock space, reverting them back to the city. After much discussion, Mayor Pro Tem Harrington moved to recommend an approval of the lease amendment with Morgan Creek, which removes the dock spaces assigned to Morgan Creek Grill and extends their lease for an additional 3 years. Can I make that as a motion now? Is that appropriate?
You can, well, we have a first reading.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but the first reading, I think, just authorizes me to sign it, so I think a
Oh,
motion
okay.
is.
Yes.
is
I'll second.
Motion seconded. So do we all understand?
Why are we taking away the docks, please? Why is that?
Because they're underutilized, and when we reconfigure the marina, we can make better use of those spaces.
What, did you talk to the restaurant about it?
Yeah, and they want spaces for sure, and we promised them that they're going to have spaces, just not 10.
Mr. Mayor?
Penny.
The dock spaces that they're being relieved of, which are 9 to 10, would then revert to Mr. Berrigan?
Well, there would,
no decision.
There's no decision's been made,
but it would be
well, obviously, if that happened, his lease would have to be
residential
adjusted.
docks.
Yep.
He would then receive income from those
Right.
residential
And we'd
docks,
have to
which
change his
Morgan
lease.
Creek does not receive.
Correct, but they're not used. Residents are not using those spaces.
But, okay, but my point being, that 10 spaces at
I don't know if
approximately,
it's going to be 10, but.
we'll say 8, let's say 8, low end, at $400 per slip, you're going to be giving $38,000, or the opportunity to have $38,000 per year from that space. And we've got the word of Mr. Berrigan that they will be for residential. But my point is, why does it have to be pursuant to the referendum? Right now,
I don't think this isn't pursuant to
that's
the
what he
referendum.
said. He said that pursuant to the referendum, he would then do that.
No,
He
you're
would
talking
do
about
what?
the
This has
ramp.
nothing to
The
do
ramp.
it.
You're talking about the
Okay.
ramp. This is the
This has
dock.
nothing to do with
That's
it.
different. That's a whole, yeah.
I mean,
That's the
let's-
ramp.
Let's pause on that. He's $100,000 of his company's money
Right.
to help us.
Of which 38,000 will come from the docks.
Well,
No, it's
okay,
independent.
obviously.
The
if-
docks are going to happen now. The ramp is
Obviously,
going to happen
if the
sometime.
docks are added to Mr. Berrigan's
Right.
purview, he will also we'll have to change his lease. We'll have to arrange that we're not just going to give him $38,000 a year with nothing back to the city.
So we'll amend his lease.
I think we'll have to.
And my point being that, at the end of the season, because I also listened to which meeting it was, where he said that he was willing, if the referendum passed, he would cancel all contracts,
Right.
and he would start over again and have residents as the first
Right.
first come, first serve
Right.
on those slips. My point is, why do you have to wait for a referendum? At the end of the season, he could do the same
Well,
thing.
I think the thinking is that we're going to reconfigure these docks. They're going to be torn up and replaced. How
Okay.
exactly, I mean, if you have a lease, your spot may not even exist if the docks are changed.
Okay.
So it doesn't make any sense. I think it's a good policy.
But we're guaranteed that there's going to be more than 8 to 12 residents. Right now, some say 12 resident slips, and others say 8 resident slips.
I think the message has gone loud and clear that we want as many residents. But then you're going to have the issue when it's boat size too. It's not just a slip, right? So if no resident has a boat that fits that slip, then obviously a non-resident would be offered it. I mean,
Right,
it's a
but with
moving
the
target.
It's a
reconfigured
management
docks,
problem.
it's going to be more where you can get smaller or larger boats in. I mean, it's
Correct.
going to
More
be much
flexible.
better,
Right.
more
Right.
flexible.
That's the whole purpose.
So the opportunity, because right now, I think the waiting list is like 65 for a slip. Yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah, that many people ahead to
you.
get a slip. Yeah, ahead of me,
And you want to keep your boat in the water? Wow.
Yes.
I never wanted to keep my boat in the
Yes.
water. Okay.
always have.
But anyway, where
Okay,
were we?
please.
I have,
Jimmy has a question.
my question has not been answered. Morgan Creek has 10 spaces,
Give or take.
and you're gonna take those away.
Correct.
They do not want them taken away,
Of course not.
but we're gonna take them away. Why?
Because we are reconfiguring the marina, we're making it more usable for the residents, and we have spaces out there. I've been out there 20 times and never seen more than one boat at those spaces. I mean, they're underutilized. Granted, the restaurant needs some space to put their boats, just like when I go to Red's and Gem Creek, and we'll do that. But this is a redevelopment, and I've said from the very beginning, all the tenants, it's going to be give and take. And this was an opportunity to do this. I think it's the best thing for the city. I think it's the best thing for the residents. And I personally promise that they're going to get spaces for the restaurant, assuming I got reelected, of course.
Oh, okay. Jimmy.
Mr. Mayor, Morgan Creek Grill, over the years, past few years, has really made the biggest effort out of all the tenants down there to appease the residents around the marina, talking about music and everything else. And
They're the only ones who had a problem.
Yeah.
So they had to
well,
change.
I'm not going to say that because we got a lot of boats that have music go out of there, but we're not talking about that. Anyway, I just think that we're penalizing them because they were late on their notice. They've got 3 years left. I don't see what the harm is to continue with that, at least the way it stands.
Because they're not used. If we're going to redevelop, this
Why
is
don't
the
you start
time to
now?
do it. It's not, the time to do it in 3 years, the time to do it is now, and they're not used.
But
If
you-
there were 8 boats there every afternoon going for lunch, it'd be a different issue, but that's not the case. Residents could use those docks. It's not gonna happen overnight, I mean, but it's gotta be part of redoing the.
But the second part of the answer is, your intention is to provide them some
Right.
space.
Right.
She says.
So we make a modification, it helps us with the redevelopment, some other things, plus you're going to try to accommodate them.
Correct.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I think my heartburn is just the manner in which we did it. We're talking about ethics and code of conduct, and yet we held them hostage, saying, okay, we will give you your next 3 years, but we got to take away your docks. I think it's just the perception of the way it was done. Now, of course, we want more resident docks. Of course, if they're not being used, we want to utilize them. But I think the perception is that we held Morgan Creek hostage to get their next 3 years. They had to give up their docks. I just say.
Okay. No other discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
Where was I?
We did an update on beach restoration and the underground storage tank.
Okay, information. Marina Leases, sorry about that. Update on the underground storage tank replacements. The request for proposal should be out this week. There are 2 requests, one to replace the tanks and one for revamping the entire system, which probably makes the most sense. Staff is hopeful that the work could begin this fall. And our next meeting is October 9th at 9:30 a.m.
Okay. I don't think these,
Update on beach restoration, which we've already done.
I think we've covered that. All right, no other items for real property. Moving on, you have accommodations tax advisory minutes as well as Board of Zoning Appeals. Planning Commission minutes are in process. And I know our attorney is working on drafting our items from our joint meeting with Planning Commission having to do with septic and matters of that ilk.
Yes, those are almost done.
I know the Water Commission has expressed to me the concern that if we change the floor to area ratio, et cetera, it's going to drive more properties to grinder pumps, and they would prefer not to do grinder pumps. I don't know where that's all going to settle out, but let's see what the product is when we're all done. Introduction of bills, resolutions. We've moved off of the Code of Conduct. First reading by title only, ordinance 2017-06, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator, city of Isle of Palms, to execute necessary documents to enter into that certain second amendment to the commercial lease. I got bugs up here. Lease between the city of Isle of Palms and Bury Island LLC, attached here too as Exhibit 1 and incorporated herein by reference. I make that as a motion for first reading by title only.
Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? First reading by title only, ordinance 2017-07, an ordinance amending Title 5, Planning Development, Chapter 4, Zoning, Article 8, Flood Damage Prevention, City of Isle of Palms Code, ordinances to provide definition to the reference datum to be used for the base flood elevation shown on the flood insurance maps firm, and to provide a minimum elevation for residential construction. I'll make that as a motion for first reading by title only. Do I have a second?
Second.
Does everybody understand what that means?
I think it's crazy.
I would like some clarification, if you don't mind.
The federal government has changed the datum from which they measure floods. And so if you were in a AE 14 before and you're in an AE 14 now, it'll be different by a foot because they changed the datum point, which is going to be confusing for everybody. They're still going to call it AE, but it'll be referenced from the 1980, I can't remember, 88 or 89 datum as opposed to the 1939 or whatever it is. And then the next...
a foot lower.
Yes, and the next provision is that basically says regardless of what all that says, your minimum elevation for residential construction is going to be 14 feet. So we're trying to adapt. This is all a product of, I guess, how many months with the Planning Commission?
At least
6 months?
three,
or
4.
more. Trying to figure out how we can react to the flood maps where so many of the areas on the island actually floodplain elevation as proposed would actually go down, whereas we know from history that
Bad idea.
bad idea.
Stupid idea.
And so this is a case where, we will by ordinance be basically overriding and making, set our own standards.
Okay.
So,
And we will have to amend again in December of 2018 to adopt the new final maps whenever they're actually ready and approved and everything like that. So this is just kind of a precursor to get us ready for that so that we don't have to make so many changes then. At that point, we'll just adopt the new maps and put the new dates into the ordinance.
well, I would hope by this action also that we're alerting contractors and property owners who want to develop property to know what's coming down the road. That if they're looking out, a year or 2 years and they're looking at the new flood area maps, that they shouldn't jump the gun, because we're going to be taking an action here that may cause them to go back to the original elevation plans.
Very silly question, but can we legally do that? Can we
sure.
override?
Oh,
the
yeah.
government? Okay, we can set our own elevation. Okay.
So, all in favor of first reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nothing heard. Moving on, no miscellaneous business. Next meeting is on the 24th. Thank you all for the long and arduous day.
You need a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I want to leave.
Aye.